My grade 1 teacher at Summit View Public School in Stouffville, Ontario, wrote on my report card, "Stay curious, Greg." Like any good teacher at that stage, she knew me better than I knew myself. The curiosity, though, has been a blessing and a curse. Being a curious sort of person, the ambiguity of that is not lost on me, I will often veer on a whim to watch or investigate whatever catches my attention. I learn new stuff. That's the upside. I get a different perspective. I learn something new. I discover something. I explore. And therefore, I'm happy and mostly satisfied on the inside. Of course, there is a downside to such behavior. The downside is that I don't stay on point very well, and thus seldom reach a complete understanding of whatever it was that I was originally heading towards. Take walking for exercise as an example. I will stop at the drop of a hat to watch building construction and large machinery digging holes, or stop and check what's new on an old path, or investigate where a new path leads. In doing so, I am delayed. I forget where I'm going. I miss whatever may have been waiting just around the corner had I stayed my course. And if I ponder that very possibility, I just may wander past the busy workmen and their cool machinery to sniff out what's around the bend. To a casual observer, I must appear lost. This propensity of mine to flit like a finch from this branch to the next has broader ramifications that I have taken a few moments to examine. Herein are the results. While in Canada for the first 18 years of my children's lives, we moved 13 times, and I held about half that many jobs. Yes, I was young, and yes, the country was full of opportunity in those years. But I know of at least 2 friends who got a job right out of high school and stayed at the same employer in the same town and have done very much better than I've done in terms of personal wealth. Did they live their best life? That's not for me to say. To my mind, they envied the exotic lifestyle I enjoyed, living in a foreign country with half the year off to travel. However, I could be wrong. What if I had stayed in Canada and never gone to Korea? In 2001, I had just lost the election to be the first mayor of the new city of Kawartha Lakes, and had I stayed, I'm sure I would have found my way back into municipal politics. I loved it. It was definitely an ego trip, but it was also an opportunity to do some good in my community. I needed to do some redemptive good because my income came from being a real estate salesperson, which my father made very clear was akin to being a lost soul. I really wasn't great at it, but good enough to manage to buy some income-generating rental property. Looking back now, I believe that had I stayed in Canada, I would have continued on my path to acquiring more rental properties, become a more successful landlord, and also continued my political career on the side to garner points for my poor lost soul. But I didn't stay in Canada. I came to Korea. I came a couple of times while still keeping one foot in Canada, then eventually came to stay in 2008, giving up my real estate license and beginning a new career teaching English. The thing is, I like teaching more than I like real estate sales. It's more stable than selling homes, and I like trying to figure out what makes my students tick better than convincing potential home buyers to take the leap. But teaching in Korea has a cost, and that cost, I have come to realize, is a very personal cost. You see, when I came to Korea, I quickly realized that all I needed to do to be successful was to be Canadian, male, white, and English-speaking. I was suddenly gold. I only needed to show that I had graduated from a Canadian university in any discipline, and I was hired. Sure, there was a little competition, but I also had an age advantage, which was perceived as maturity. Most New English teachers like me were young and just out of university. I had this air of maturity that seemed to push aside any possible questions as to my actual ability, and magically, doors opened. I would have had to try really hard to fail in order to have my value even questioned. Quite ridiculous, to be sure, but still, it was pretty heady stuff. Had I stayed in Canada, I would have had to work to prove my value and worth to potential employers on a drastically different scale. I believe the result would have garnered me a truer sense of self and thus better equipped me to manage failure and criticism. Take politics as an example. I had to constantly prove myself over the 3 years of my term, and then every 3 years I had to fight against all comers in an election to prove that I was still more valuable than the next person. Even then, I might lose, as I did in 2001. The bottom line is that changing careers, or direction when walking, or countries to call home, there's always an upside and a downside. It's best to accept that fact. Then carry on like you're in your right mind.